My mother-in-law got pregnant at an advanced age. I advised her to abort, considering the high risks due to her age, but she responded by slapping me. My husband immediately stood in front of her and scolded me. Ching-tang, how could you be so selfish? Later, after much deliberation, my mother-in-law aborted the child, but after my daughter was born, she locked her in the storage room. I knelt and begged her for some formula, but she poured the entire can down the drain, saying, "Starving to death would be just right. Saves money." On the day my daughter turned 1 month old, I drank the tonic soup handed to me by my mother-in-law. As blood gushed from my 7 orifices, I saw her smothering my daughter with a pillow. After my death, my husband chose to forgive his mother and married another woman. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in the familiar living room. Nora Yu stroked her flat belly and proudly announced, "I'm pregnant." I smiled my gentlest smile. "Congratulations, Mom. This is truly wonderful news. This time, I want her to experience firsthand just how dangerous it is to give birth at an advanced age, how bone-deep the pain of losing a child can be, and what it truly feels like to be betrayed by one's own flesh and blood." Wave after wave of excruciating pain crashed over me, my vision blurred by sweat. On the delivery bed, I could feel my life slipping away, yet I still clung desperately to the sheets. Fighting with every ounce of strength to bring this child into the world, the mother's blood pressure continues to drop. "Prepare for an emergency C-section." The doctor's voice came from far away. "No," the mother-in-law's shrill voice pierced through the chaos in the delivery room. "A natural birth is better for the baby." When I gave birth to Jace, it was a life-and-death struggle too. Young people these days are just too delicate. I opened my mouth to call for help, but no sound came out. Where is my husband? Why isn't he coming to save me? My vision began to darken, and in my final moments of consciousness, I saw my mother-in-law's face leaning in. "Good riddance to the worthless burden. She can pay with her life for my little son." I died, but strangely, I could still see. I saw myself covered in a white sheet being wheeled out of the delivery room. I saw my newborn daughter being abused to death by my mother-in-law, and my husband signing the forgiveness document without shedding a single tear. I saw my mother collapse from grief at my funeral, while my mother-in-law wore a bright red dress as if attending a celebration. The soul drifted in the void for an unknown length of time when suddenly, a blinding white light struck. Sang Ning. "What are you spacing out for? Mom is talking to you." My husband's impatient voice pulled me back to reality. I blinked, and the scene before me sent a chill down my spine. The familiar restaurant, the familiar dining table, with my mother-in-law seated at the head, dabbing the corners of her mouth with that deliberately elegant gesture. This was a family gathering half a year after my father-in-law passed away, in my past life. It was on this very day that my mother-in-law announced her pregnancy. What I mean is, my mother-in-law caressed her flat belly, a dreamy smile spreading across her face. Before old Lou left, he gave me one last gift. "I'm pregnant, 6 weeks along." My fingers dug into my palms, the pain reminding me this was no illusion. I was reborn, returning to the day the tragedy began, in my past life. Upon hearing this news, I immediately whispered to my husband, urging him to consider the risks of his elderly mother's pregnancy. But my mother-in-law overheard and slapped me on the spot, calling me an outsider who shouldn't interfere. That slap shattered the last illusion I had about this family. "Oh my God, Mom. This is such a surprise." My voice was filled with joy, and I even stood up to walk over to my mother-in-law, giving her a gentle hug. "This is the best keepsake Dad left for you." My mother-in-law was clearly stunned, and even my husband gave me a surprised glance. In my past life, I would never have reacted this way. "You're only 58 this year, and with modern medicine being so advanced, there's absolutely no problem." I continued speaking, wearing a perfect smile on my face. "Jace, don't you think so? We're going to have a little brother or sister." My husband's expression shifted from surprise to satisfaction. "Sang Ning is right, Mom. You should just focus on resting during your pregnancy." My mother-in-law gave me a suspicious glance, but was quickly pleased by her son's agreement. "Jace is so sensible. Old Lou's spirit in heaven will surely bless this child." I sat back in my seat, lowering my head to sip the soup and conceal the cold glint in my eyes. "Yes. I will let all of you get what you wish for. This time, I won't stop my mother-in-law from giving birth to that so-called gift." because I want her to personally experience what it means to reap what one sows. The blood test report from the hospital trembled slightly in my hands. 3 weeks pregnant. The exact same time point as in my past life, standing in the obstetrics corridor, watching the rounded bellies of pregnant women. Memories from my past life flooded over me like a tide. My daughter's loud cries at birth, my mother-in-law's hands pretending to be loving as she took her, and the tiny, blue-purple body I saw in the nursery 3 months later, at that time when I was in critical condition from a difficult childbirth and massive bleeding. My mother-in-law stood by the delivery bed just like this, watching me struggle on the brink of death, and when I finally gave birth to my daughter after enduring countless hardships, she turned around and pulled out my oxygen tube. A mess. Sang, would you like to schedule your next prenatal checkup? The nurse's question brought me back to reality. No need. I folded the examination sheet and tucked it into the bottom of my bag. I'd like to schedule an abortion. The nurse was visibly startled. Are you sure? The fetus is currently very healthy. Friday afternoon 2 weeks from now. I interrupted her, my voice eerily calm, as if not deciding the fate of a life. Please schedule it at the 3rd Branch Hospital in the distant suburbs. When I walked out of the hospital, the early summer sun scorched my skin. In my previous life at this time, I was overjoyed preparing a surprise for my husband. Now, the test results in my bag felt like a piece of burning charcoal, searing my ribs with pain. This child cannot stay. It's not that I don't love her, but I know all too well the fate she will face, rather than letting her relive the suffering of her past life. I'll use her departure as the first step in my revenge. The phone vibrated, the word husband flashing incessantly on the screen. Mom wants to eat Osmanthus cake from the south of the city. Buy it first, then make dinner. His commanding tone was exactly the same as in our past life. She's suffering from morning sickness. Don't dawdle. Okay, I'll go right away, I replied obediently. The line at the pastry shop in the south of the city was very long. Standing at the end, I slowly moved forward while taking the opportunity to glance at the test results in my bag. In my previous life, I didn't announce the news until I was 8 weeks pregnant. This time, I'm taking the initiative. It was almost 7 o'clock when I got home. My mother-in-law was half lying on the leather sofa. Seeing me enter, she immediately scowled. 3 hours just to buy pastries. Are you trying to starve us to death? Sorry, there were too many people in line. I bent down to change my shoes, deliberately letting the prenatal checkup folder slip out of my bag. What is this? My husband was the first to pick it up. After pulling out the test results inside, his expression changed drastically. You're pregnant. My mother-in-law sprang up as if pricked by a needle, snatching the test results from him. Impossible. When did you? 3 weeks. I touched my flat belly, a shy smile appearing on my face, almost the same time as Mom. What a coincidence. My husband stood there with his mouth agape, his gaze shifting back and forth between me and his mother. This mama's boy now seems like a malfunctioning robot, completely unsure whom to care for first. Jace, I broke the silence softly. Though it's earlier than expected, isn't it great for the 2 children to grow up together? Great. What's so great about it? My mother-in-law suddenly shrieked, throwing the test results on the floor. I need rest during my pregnancy, and she just has to steal the spotlight. Mom, calm down. My husband hurriedly supported her, then turned to frown at me. Sang Ning, how could you not discuss such a big matter in advance? I bent down to pick up the examination slip, suppressing the metallic taste of blood in my throat. Look, this is the Liu family's rule. Even getting pregnant requires prior approval. I thought you'd be happy. Tears instantly welled up in my eyes, my acting surpassing even my mother-in-law's from my past life. The doctor said it might be twins. Twins. My husband's attitude softened immediately. This man, who values family lineage above all else, falls for this trick every time. My mother-in-law glared at my belly with a sinister look. Do you know how risky it is for an older woman to carry twins? What if you miscarry? Mom, my husband interrupted her unusually. Sang Ning is only 32, not considered old for pregnancy. Seizing the moment, I handed her Osmanthus cake. Mom, have some snacks first. I'll go prepare dinner right away. The mother-in-law knocked over the pastry box with a swipe. Stop pretending. You're deliberately trying to provoke me. She suddenly clutched her stomach and groaned. Ouch, my stomach hurts. Honey, my husband panicked instantly, shooting me a fierce glare. look what you've done. The act has begun. In my past life, she always used this trick, pretending to be in pain whenever I showed the slightest resistance. I stood still, calmly observing her exaggerated performance. I'll call an ambulance, I said, reaching for my phone. No need. She immediately stopped moaning and glared at me fiercely. Just help me back to the room. Jace, you come with me. My husband supported her as they left, like a loyal dog, throwing me a warning glance before departing. I smiled as I watched them go upstairs, then leisurely picked up the scattered Osmanthus cakes. In the kitchen, I chopped vegetables while making plans. My mother-in-law's reaction was more intense than expected. This was good. Anger clouds judgment, and what I want is for her to lose control. At dinner, my mother-in-law refused to come downstairs. My husband took a tray up to her and returned empty-handed half an hour later, his face dark. Mom is furious. He began accusing me as soon as he sat down. You knew she's emotionally unstable now that she's just pregnant, yet you chose this moment to. I didn't expect Mom to mind so much. I lowered my head to eat, my voice full of grievance. The baby's arrival should be a happy occasion. My husband scratched his head irritably. Anyway, just try to accommodate Mom more during this time. It's not easy for her to be pregnant at her age. I will, I replied obediently, then suddenly changed the subject. By the way, didn't Mom mention wanting to hire a confinement nanny before? Yeah, she said she wants two, one to take care of the newborn and one to look after her. I put down the soup spoon. Looking innocent, why not save the money for Mom's postpartum recovery? I can ask relatives to recommend a maternity nurse, which could save us a lot. My husband's eyes lit up. This stingy man cares most about money. Do you have someone suitable in mind? My cousin just got her maternity nurse certification and charges only half the market rate. I lied without changing my expression, and she's especially good at taking care of older expectant mothers. Bring her to meet Mom tomorrow, my husband declared decisively, completely falling into my trap. Late at night, I lay in bed pretending to sleep, listening to my husband snoring beside me. But my hand gently caressed my flat stomach. I'm sorry, my child, but your departure will cause more destruction than your existence ever could. Doesn't mother-in-law value that gift in her belly the most? I'll make her watch as this gift destroys everything she holds dear. The day of my mother-in-law's prenatal checkup became the top priority in the household. I stood in front of the wardrobe, watching her try on the 5th maternity dress. The silk fabric gleaming expensively in the morning light. This one is slimming. I handed her a pearl necklace, pretending not to notice the beads of sweat on the back of her neck. The doctor said all your indicators are excellent. She snorted but still took the necklace. For the past half-month, I've been attending to her like a queen. Even my husband was amazed by my thoughtfulness. Where's Jace? Why isn't he ready yet? My mother-in-law shouted towards the staircase. Coming, coming. My husband ran downstairs while tying his tie, car keys in hand. Sang Ning. Did you pack Mom's thermos? All set. It's red date tea at 40 degrees. I smiled and handed over the carefully prepared maternity bag, with every item arranged according to my mother-in-law's preferences. In my previous life, when I was in difficult labor, they didn't even prepare a single sanitary pad for me. After watching them leave, I immediately went upstairs and locked the bedroom door. I took out the prenatal vitamin bottle from the bottom drawer of the nightstand, poured out 2 pills, and crushed them onto a tissue. These weren't vitamins at all. They were birth control pills. Since confirming my rebirth, I've been taking it to ensure the fetus in my womb doesn't truly develop. My phone vibrated. A reminder from the hospital about the abortion procedure. I deleted the text message and instead opened my computer to search for complications of advanced maternal age pregnancy. The printer hummed, spitting out sheets of information. Gestational hypertension, diabetes, postpartum hemorrhage, each risk was highlighted with a fluorescent marker. The sound of the door lock turning made me quickly hide all the evidence. By the time my husband pushed the door open, I was only in my pajamas, organizing the wardrobe. Mom's test results are very good, he said, loosening his tie. The doctor said the fetus is larger than the actual gestational age. It might be a boy. That's wonderful. I feigned delight. By the way, my cousin is coming tomorrow for an interview as a postpartum nanny. Would it be convenient for Mom to meet her? He frowned. Mom has plans to have tea with her friends tomorrow. Let's reschedule. I lowered my head to hide my sneer. My mother-in-law's so-called sister tea party was nothing more than a stage to flaunt her late pregnancy. Then I'll accompany Mom. I happen to have a surprise to announce too. I touched my flat belly. My husband immediately tensed up. What surprise? You'll find out tomorrow. I smiled mysteriously and turned toward the bathroom, making sure he caught a glimpse of the hospital appointment slip peeking out from my pajama pocket. The next morning, I got up early on purpose to make shrimp dumplings, my mother-in-law's favorite. By the time she slowly came downstairs, I had already set the table. Why so attentive today? She eyed me suspiciously. Mom, today is a special day, I said, serving her porridge. I'd like to accompany you to the tea party. She was about to refuse when she suddenly caught sight of the hospital appointment slip I had deliberately placed on the coffee table. She grabbed it, her eyes widening. An abortion, today. Her husband's spoon clattered to the floor. What? My eyes instantly reddened. I went for a follow-up yesterday. The doctor said the embryo had stopped developing. Trembling, I pulled out the fake ultrasound report from my bag. The surgery needs to be done as soon as possible. My mother-in-law's expression swiftly shifted from shock to concealed delight. Then she forced out a semblance of sympathy. Oh dear, this is so sudden, Mom. My husband rushed over and hugged me. The first voluntary embrace in 6 months. Why didn't you say something sooner? I was afraid it would affect your and Mom's mood. I sobbed against his shoulder, stealing a glance at my mother-in-law's reaction. She was staring at the ultrasound report, the corners of her mouth twitching uncontrollably into a smile. I'll go to the hospital with you, my husband said. No need, it's just a minor procedure. I wiped away non-existent tears. Mom has a tea party today, right? Don't let her miss it. My mother-in-law immediately chimed in. That's right, Jace should go with her. I'll have Sister Lee pick me up. She patted my shoulder, her grip noticeably heavier than usual. Take care of your health. There will be other chances. I lowered my head, feigning grief, while inwardly sneering. Of course she wanted my husband to accompany me. That way, she could freely boast at the tea party about her unfortunate daughter-in-law who miscarried, all while flaunting her own still-strong pregnancy bump. The surgery appointment was fake. What I'm really going to is the bank. Over the past month, I quietly reviewed all the transaction records from our joint accounts and discovered that my husband has been transferring a support allowance to his mother every month, with the amount far exceeding normal levels, at the bank counter. I handed over our marriage certificate and my ID. Please check all the accounts associated with my name. After typing on the keyboard, the teller looked up. There have been large withdrawals from your joint account with Mr. Husband recently. Would you like the details? Print everything. The stack of paper from the printer grew thicker and thicker. I skimmed through quickly, my heart pounding. Aside from the known transfers, my husband had also used our shared savings to buy high-value pension insurance for his mother without my knowledge, listing only himself as the beneficiary. Print the transaction history for this card too. I pointed at the unfamiliar card number at the very bottom. I found this in my husband's old wallet and hadn't had the chance to verify it until now. The results left me breathless. Over the past 2 years, this card had been receiving a monthly payment from Nora Decor, totaling nearly $400,000, and Nora Decor happened to be the shell company under my mother-in-law's name that had never conducted any actual business. So that's how it is. My husband has been transferring our joint assets through fraudulent transactions. A secret from my past life that I remained unaware of until death now lies bare before my eyes. I photographed the documents for records and locked the originals in a newly rented safe deposit box as I stepped out of the bank. The sunlight was so glaring I could barely open my eyes. The phone rang. It was my husband. Is the surgery over? Mom asked if you'd like some chicken soup. I nearly laughed out loud. No need. I'd like some quiet time. I lowered my voice, feigning weakness. Could you bring me some bird's nest porridge from the east side tonight? All right, you get some rest. The concern in his tone was hard to discern as genuine or feigned. After hanging up, I took a taxi to Chengjin's clinic. This college classmate of mine is now an obstetrician-gynecologist. In my past life, she had secretly informed me that the postpartum meals my mother-in-law prepared were problematic. San Ning, Chengjin was startled to see me. Didn't you have an appointment today? It's fake. I closed the door. I need your help. Half an hour later, I left with a real abortion certificate and several documents on the risks of advanced maternal age pregnancy. Cheng Jin also handed me a small bottle. The dosage is very light, but enough to cause severe morning sickness. When I got home, I was surprised to find my mother-in-law actually making soup in the kitchen. As she turned around, I clearly saw the undisguised triumph in her eyes. "You're back. I made you some Angelica chicken soup." She handed me a bowl, saying, "It's good for replenishing qi and blood." "Thanks, Mom." I pretended to take a sip. "You should sit down and rest. Don't tire yourself." She nodded contentedly, then suddenly covered her mouth and retched. I quickly helped her sit down and took the opportunity to sprinkle the powder Cheng Jin had given me into her thermos. "Mom, you don't look well. Have some water." She drank a few sips without suspicion, and soon her face turned pale, strange, suddenly feeling dizzy. "Pregnancy at an advanced age is like this," I said with feigned concern, handing her printed risk information. "The doctor mentioned today that women your age are most prone to hyperemesis gravidarum." Mother-in-law looked at the high-risk warning highlighted in red on the documents, her fingers trembling slightly. Just then, my husband walked in carrying a bowl of bird's nest porridge. Seeing the situation, he rushed over immediately. "Mom, what's wrong? She might be too exhausted." I sighed. "Mom insisted on making soup for me." Mother-in-law wanted to argue but was interrupted by an even more intense wave of nausea. My husband was frantically flipping through the documents, his expression growing increasingly grim. "Mom, the doctor said you need absolute rest in your condition." Watching this mother and son, one deathly pale, the other panicked, I felt a long-lost sense of satisfaction well up inside me. "This is just the beginning, dear mother-in-law. Every nightmare you carefully designed, I will return to you one by one." On the 7th day after my miscarriage, my mother-in-law was already vomiting so badly she couldn't get out of bed. The anti-nausea medication prescribed by the doctor seems completely ineffective. Her sunken eyes make her look like a skeleton. "Did Mom not eat again today?" My husband frowned at the untouched dinner plate when he returned from work. "I was just bringing new vomit bags to my mother-in-law's room." Hyperemesis gravidarum is like this. I looked it up. It can last until the second trimester. He scratched his head irritably. "Why wasn't it this bad when you were pregnant? Young, huh?" I smiled bitterly. The doctor said the risks skyrocket after 35, and at Mom's age, I deliberately left the sentence hanging. This was exactly the effect I wanted, to plant a seed of doubt in his subconscious about his mother's decision. Late at night, I quietly got up and retrieved the pregnancy diary my mother-in-law had hidden in the bedside drawer. She had kept this habit for decades. In my past life, I had accidentally stumbled upon her venomous curses about me. May 20, that bitch had a miscarriage today. Serves her right. Jace actually seemed a bit upset. What a spineless man. May 25, Ivy been vomiting badly. It must be that bitch cursing me. She acts so filial, but I bet she slipped something into the soup. I let out a cold laugh and kept flipping through the pages. June 1, an old classmate introduced me to a fortune teller who claims to predict the baby's gender. The master asked for mine and Jace's birth details and said it's a boy. But we must beware of villains. I quickly took photos of these pages with my phone, especially the contact information of that master. In her previous life, she had also sought out this charlatan, only to be swindled out of 100,000 yuan. At the time, I foolishly comforted her. How ironic it seems now. The next morning at breakfast, my mother-in-law was so weak she could barely hold a spoon. My husband finally couldn't hold back anymore. "Mom, maybe we should consider the doctor's suggestion." "What suggestion?" She looked up warily. "To terminate the pregnancy," my husband said with difficulty. "Your health really can't." "Bullshit." My mother-in-law slammed the table, splashing porridge onto the tablecloth. "Did that bitch say something to you?" I was just coming out with a glass of juice when her words froze me in place, my eyes instantly reddening. "Mom, I'm just worried about you. Stop pretending to be pitiful." She grabbed a napkin and threw it at me. "Ever since your miscarriage, I've been feeling unwell. It must be your doing." My husband, unusually, took my side. "Mom, Sang Ning takes care of you every day. How can you say such things?" Seeing her son not siding with her, my mother-in-law immediately changed tactics, covering her face and sobbing. "What sin have I committed? Old Lou is gone, and now even my son doesn't want me anymore." My husband was immediately at a loss. I handed him a tissue at the right moment and said softly, "Mom is just emotional because of pregnancy hormones. I understand." The farce ended with my mother-in-law going back to her room to rest. My husband looked at me guiltily and said, "Sang Ning, Mom wasn't like this before, I understand." I interrupted him gently. "By the way, Director Wang from the finance department is looking for you. He mentioned an urgent project." His expression changed. "How did you know?" "You left your phone in the bathroom, so I charged it for you." I lied without batting an eye. I just glanced at it when I heard it vibrate. In reality, I had gone through all his call logs and emails. That urgent project was actually a secret date with his female colleague. Something I had been kept in the dark about in my past life. As soon as my husband rushed out the door, I immediately began organizing all the evidence I had gathered: transfer records, pregnancy diary entries, flirtatious text messages. The printer was working when my mother-in-law suddenly appeared at the study door. "What are you doing?" She eyed the paper-spitting printer suspiciously. "Work documents." I quickly switched the screen. "A friend introduced me to a freelance design job, just trying to earn some extra money for the household." She snorted disdainfully. "Thinking about making money just days after a miscarriage? People might think our Liu family has mistreated you." Mom is absolutely right. I lowered my head in apology while making sure she saw the deliberately displayed bank account balance on the screen, which showed less than a tenth of the actual savings. Mother-in-law took the bait as expected. "Why is there so little left? Didn't Jace just get his bonus?" "Maybe the investments didn't go well." I feigned hesitation. "Jace said you'd know about it." "Know what?" Her voice suddenly rose sharply. "It's about that insurance project." I hesitated, then said, "Never mind. Maybe I misunderstood." My mother-in-law's expression kept changing, but in the end, she left without saying a word. I knew she would definitely confront my husband about the money. Exactly what I wanted. In the afternoon, I went to Cheng Jin's clinic for a follow-up appointment. "You're recovering well physically," she said after the examination, "but psychological trauma takes time." I smiled wryly. "It's much better than my past life, seeing no one around." I lowered my voice. "Have you found out about that so-called master?" Cheng Jin nodded. "Just a con artist who preys on pregnant women. He was reported last month and is currently under police investigation." "Perfect," I smiled. "Could you anonymously provide some leads for me? Like his recent elderly pregnant clients, for example." Leaving the clinic, I received a call from my husband, his voice more panicked than I'd ever heard before. "Sungning, Mom's been taken away by the police." "What? What happened?" I feigned shock. "They said it's suspected fraud." "Damn it, how could Mom possibly?" He was incoherent. "Come back quickly, we need to go to the police station." At the police station, my mother-in-law sat pale-faced in the interrogation room. It turned out that the so-called master had been reported for using birth dates to commit fraud. The police followed the leads and uncovered a recent list of victims, and the 100,000 yuan transferred by my mother-in-law was clearly among them. "I just wanted to confirm the baby's gender," she sobbed, clutching her husband's hand. "How was I supposed to know it was a scam?" Her husband's face darkened. "Mom, where did you get 100,000 yuan from?" My mother-in-law hesitated, her eyes darting around. I chimed in at the right moment. "Was it the money Dad left behind?" She immediately seized the opportunity. Yes, it's Laolu's inheritance." My husband was skeptical. I knew what he was thinking. There was clearly almost nothing left of my father's estate. This crack would widen over time, and all I needed to do was wait patiently. After completing the formalities, my mother-in-law was already too weak to walk. In the car on the way home, she suddenly grabbed the front seat and curled up in pain. "Mom!" My husband slammed on the brakes. My stomach. It hurt so much. She was drenched in cold sweat. I immediately dialed 120 while noticing the bloodstains seeping through her pants. For an older pregnant woman to suffer such a shock, it's no surprise something went wrong. As the ambulance wailed its way to us, I tightened my grip on the voice recorder in my bag. As she was being lifted onto the stretcher, my mother-in-law was still cursing. "It's all that bitch's fault. She's jinxing me." This time, my husband didn't immediately refute her. He looked at me with an inscrutable expression, while I responded with an innocent, concerned look. In the hospital corridor, the doctor solemnly informed us, "Threatened miscarriage. She needs to be hospitalized for observation." My husband slumped onto the bench. I gently held his hand and said, "It'll be okay." While silently calculating how much of the medicine Cheng Jin had given me remained, my mother-in-law ultimately kept the baby, but the doctor warned she must stay in bed until delivery. While packing her hospital supplies at home, I found that ward-off evil talisman under her pillow, clearly inscribed with my name and birth date. I lit the talisman with a lighter and watched it turn to ashes in the ceramic cup. "Dear mother-in-law, your little tricks are too childish. The real revenge has only just begun." On the day my mother-in-law was discharged from the hospital, the house was filled with the bitter scent of Chinese herbs. She reclined halfway on the chaise lounge in the living room, her belly noticeably swollen, her complexion as sallow as an old newspaper. The doctor said absolute rest is required. My husband handed me bags of Chinese medicine, his voice carrying an exhaustion I'd never heard before. "Sang Ning, you've worked hard these days, it's what I should do." I took the medicine packets. This man who once made my heart flutter now makes me nauseous. My mother-in-law suddenly opened her eyes. "Jace, where's my bird's nest? It's warming in the kitchen." I turned to fetch it, but she sharply stopped me. "Who asked you to get it?" She struggled to sit up. "Jace, you go." Her hands are dirty. My husband frowned but obediently walked toward the kitchen. For the past month, he had been shuttling between the company and the hospital, with heavy dark circles under his eyes. I noticed the few new white hairs sprouting at the back of his head and sneered inwardly. Back in my previous life when I suffered from postpartum depression, he hadn't cared this much. "Mom, don't get angry all the time," I said as I sat beside her, deliberately lowering my voice. "It's not good for the baby." She immediately covered her stomach and glared at me warily. "Don't you dare curse my child." How could I? I put on a hurt expression and pulled out a box of imported nuts from my bag. "I bought these especially for you. They contain DHA, which is good for the baby's brain development." She took it suspiciously and glanced at the packaging. "So expensive." "No matter how expensive, it's worth it." I smiled. "After all, it's a gift for you and Dad." By the time my husband returned with the bird's nest, my mother-in-law had already eaten half the box of nuts. She waved the box triumphantly at her son. "See how much more filial your wife is. Far better than you." My husband gave me a surprised glance, and I responded with a meek smile. For the past month, I had meticulously played the role of a dutiful daughter-in-law, even earning praise from the neighborhood cleaning lady for my filial piety. "Oh, by the way, Mom," I casually mentioned, "Dr. Zhong suggested you engage in some light exercise to prevent gestational diabetes." "What diabetes?" My mother-in-law immediately tensed up. "Advanced maternal age comes with common complications," I said with concern, "but don't worry. As long as you control your diet and exercise more, it should be fine." My husband immediately chimed in. "Sangning is right. Mom, you should listen to the doctor's advice." My mother-in-law nodded reluctantly. I lowered my head to organize the medicine bag, hiding the smile at the corner of my lips. In my past life, she used doctor's advice to pressure me into a natural birth. Now it's her turn to taste this medicine. After dinner, my husband surprisingly took the initiative to wash the dishes. Standing at the kitchen door, watching his clumsy movements, I suddenly spoke up. "Jace, I want to get back into design." His hand slipped, and the plate almost fell to the ground. "Now, household expenses have increased, and Mom needs nutritional supplements," I said softly. "An old client just reached out to me for jewelry design work. I can do it from home." My husband dried his hands, his brow furrowed. "Mom needs care right now. I promise it won't cause any trouble," I quickly said, "and we'll split the income 70-30, with you taking the larger share." His eyes lit up. This greedy man could never resist money. "Fine, but don't let Mom find out." "Of course," I replied obediently, sneering inwardly. Naturally, he didn't want his mother to know, otherwise, that 70% would be confiscated. Returning to the study, I opened the long dusty design software. In my past life, I was a somewhat renowned jewelry designer, but I had to give up my career under my mother-in-law's pressure after marriage. Now, these skills will become my weapons. The first order was a simple wedding ring design. I deliberately added a few inconspicuous flaws, just enough to make the client dissatisfied but not so much that they would return the product immediately. I needed an excuse to frequently go out for negotiations, not actually to make money. At 2 a.m., I was revising the design drawings when the study door suddenly swung open. My mother-in-law stood at the door, her belly protruding, her nightgown loosely tied. "Mom, why are you up?" I quickly switched the screen. She didn't answer, walking straight up to me and flipping open the laptop. "What the hell are you doing up so late?" On the screen was clearly my chat window with Cheng Jin. The last message sent 10 minutes ago: "Reduce the dosage by half again, or the liver and kidney damage will be irreversible." My mother-in-law's face suddenly changed. "What medicine? Are you poisoning me?" "Mom, you've got it all wrong." I hastily stood up, feigning panic as I blocked the screen. "These are just the tonic prescriptions Dr. Cheng gave me." "Bullshit." She swung a slap at me. I was prepared and pretended to stagger into the bookshelf, sending several books crashing to the floor. My husband rushed in at the noise. "What's going on? Your wife is trying to kill me." My mother-in-law shrieked hysterically, pointing at the screen. "She's poisoning me." My husband looked at the screen, and I burst into tears first. "That's the contraceptive prescribed by Dr. Cheng. After the miscarriage, I need to recover for half a year before trying again." Covering my face, I sobbed. I was afraid Mom would be upset if she found out, so I kept it a secret. My husband stared at the chat records with a complicated expression. It did indeed say contraceptive for recovery. My mother-in-law refused to back down. "She's lying. I've been feeling dizzy lately. It must be because of her." "Mom," my husband suddenly raised his voice. "Sang Ning has been taking care of you ever since her miscarriage. How could you think of her like that?" I looked up in shock. This was the first time in 6 months he had stood up for me and my mother. My mother-in-law was also stunned, then flew into a rage. "You're yelling at me for her. I'm carrying your own brother in my womb. I just hope you can be reasonable," my husband said wearily, rubbing his temples. "Sang Ning, go to bed." I lowered my head and stepped out of the study, hearing my mother-in-law's screams and the sound of things being thrown behind me. Lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and smiled silently. The next morning at breakfast, my mother-in-law refused to come downstairs. My husband, with dark circles under his eyes, ate alone and suddenly said, "Take that design job." I paused with my chopsticks. Mom agreed. "No need to tell her." He lowered his head to sip porridge. "Just know your limits." I nodded obediently, fully aware that his change in attitude wasn't out of consideration for me, but because he was exhausted from dealing with my mother-in-law and desperately needed a punching bag. In the following days, I worked every morning, but in reality, I went to Cheng Jin's clinic or the lawyer's office. In the afternoon, I went home to take care of my mother-in-law and added some seasoning to her food. It wouldn't harm the fetus but would cause extreme discomfort to the pregnant woman. My mother-in-law's condition worsened day by day. On the day the gestational diabetes diagnosis came in, she smashed everything breakable in the living room. "It's all because of your curse." She pointed at my nose and yelled, "Ever since you had the miscarriage, I haven't had a single good day." I stood amidst the scattered fragments, suddenly no longer willing to pretend. "Mom, the doctor said it's a common condition for older pregnant women. What does that have to do with me?" My mother-in-law didn't expect me to talk back and was momentarily speechless. My husband hurried out from the study. "What's wrong now? Your wife has grown too bold," she immediately wailed. "My life is so bitter. After old Lou passed, now my daughter-in-law bullies me." My husband looked at me, his eyes filled with an exhaustion I'd never seen before. I met his gaze calmly. "I was just stating the facts." The words acted like a fuse, and my mother-in-law grabbed the fruit plate from the coffee table and hurled it at me. I dodged to the side, and the plate smashed against the wall, sending fruit scattering across the floor. "Enough," my husband suddenly roared. "Mom, can you just stop?" My mother-in-law widened her eyes in shock, then clutched her stomach and moaned. "Ouch, my stomach, the baby." This time, I didn't panic but calmly dialed 120. Before the ambulance arrived, I leaned close to her ear and whispered, just loud enough for us to hear, "Mom, did you know? Gestational diabetes is most afraid of emotional agitation." She suddenly looked up, a flicker of fear flashing in her eyes. I stepped back with a smile, like a dutiful daughter-in-law, packing her hospital supplies for her. In the hospital corridor, the doctor solemnly informed us, "Her blood sugar is too high. She must strictly control her diet, otherwise, there's a high risk of macrosomia and a greatly increased chance of difficult labor." The mother-in-law's face turned pale. "Can I have a natural birth?" Given your advanced age and diabetes, we recommend a C-section, the doctor said, flipping through the medical records. Of course, the final decision is yours. After the doctor left, the mother-in-law grabbed her son's hand. Jace, I must have a natural birth. The master said children born naturally are smarter. This time, my husband didn't immediately agree but hesitated and looked at me. I said softly, it's better to listen to the doctor. Shut up. The mother-in-law screamed, you're just trying to kill my child. A nurse rushed over upon hearing the commotion to intervene. I retreated to a corner of the hallway, pulling out a box of chocolates from my bag and deliberately rustling the wrapper. What's that? The mother-in-law immediately turned her gaze, her eyes gleaming with hunger. Diabetics crave sweets far more than ordinary people. Chocolates from a client. I pretended to put them away. Mom, you can't have these now. Give them to me. She struggled to get out of bed. Just one piece. My husband stopped her. Mom, the doctor said no sweets. I want to eat it now. She threw a tantrum like a spoiled child. You all just want to starve me to death. Helplessly, I handed her the box, just one small piece. My mother-in-law snatched the chocolates and wolfed down 3 pieces before my husband forcibly stopped her. Chocolate smudges still lingered at the corners of her mouth, yet she was already grinning triumphantly at me, as if she had won a battle. I looked at this pitiful woman, wondering if she would still remember the taste of these chocolates when she was lying on the delivery bed in unbearable pain. My mother-in-law's blood sugar fluctuated like a roller coaster, soaring and plummeting unpredictably. Mom, are you really not sneaking any sweets? My husband, called to the hospital for the 3rd time, couldn't hide the impatience in his voice. No, my mother-in-law flatly denied, but her eyes darted toward the bedside table drawer. There lies the half box of cookies I accidentally left behind. Sang Ning. My husband suddenly called out, how's work been lately? Not bad, just landed a big order with a 30,000 advance. His eyes lit up. That much? The client is very satisfied with my design. I deliberately added, if everything goes smoothly, there's still a balance of 70,000 left to pay. My mother-in-law immediately perked up her ears. What kind of design earns so much money? Private customization. I brushed it off lightly and changed the subject. By the way, Mom, about that master you mentioned last time, what about it? She asked warily. I found out he was arrested for fraud, I said anxiously. He scammed a lot of pregnant women out of their money. My mother-in-law's face changed. Nonsense. He clearly, Mom, my husband interrupted her. You didn't give him money again, did you? Her evasive expression said it all. My husband turned livid with anger. Was 100,000 not enough? Just how much did you give him? Just 200,000. Her voice grew softer. 200,000. My husband suddenly stood up. Where did the money come from? My mother-in-law fell silent, her eyes darting around. Let it go, Jace. I stepped in to mediate. Mom just wants what's best for the child. Shut up. My mother-in-law suddenly yelled at me. It's all your fault. Ever since you married into this family, nothing good has happened to us. This time, my husband didn't side with his mother. He looked at her coldly and said, Mom, if you keep this up, I'll send you to a postpartum care center until the baby is born. My mother-in-law fell silent instantly, like a chicken with its neck wrung. The doctor came in for rounds and announced that my mother-in-law could be discharged, but she must strictly control her diet. On the way home, my husband unusually offered to carry my bag, while my mother-in-law sulked in the back seat. That night, my husband knocked on the study door. Can I take a look at that design work? I raised an eyebrow and opened the computer to show him the unfinished draft. It was a pair of earring designs for a particularly demanding wealthy client who had already rejected 5 drafts. It looks quite nice. He offered the insincere compliment before abruptly changing the subject. By the way, about Mom's 200,000, I assume it came from the alimony you've been giving her, I stated bluntly. My husband's face paled. How did you know about the alimony? The bank statements showed it. I replied calmly, along with that transfer record from Nora Decor. Cold sweat beaded on his forehead. Sang Ning, let me explain. No need. I shut the laptop. I just want to know how much is left in our joint account, he stammered, unable to speak. I gave a cold laugh and pulled out a stack of documents from the drawer. Let me tell you then. Less than 1/10. My husband's face turned ashen. This evidence was enough to leave him with nothing in the divorce. And he knew it all too well, sang Ning. His voice trembled. I was momentarily confused. I can let it go, I said softly, but on two conditions. Go ahead. First, starting today. Mom's expenses will be her own responsibility. I raised a finger. Second, my income belongs to me alone. My husband hesitated. I know he's weighing the pros and cons. All right, he finally nodded. But don't let Mom know. Of course, I smiled. This is our little secret. This secret was like a knife, making the first cut in the seemingly unbreakable alliance between the Lu mother and son. The mother-in-law quickly noticed something was off when she asked her son to buy Bird's Nest again. Her husband unexpectedly refused. Mom, the doctor said we need to watch our diet, he said, playing with his phone and avoiding her gaze. What do you mean? The mother-in-law raised her voice. I'm carrying your brother, and I can't even have a bite of Bird's Nest. It's not that you can't, her husband stammered. It's just that money's tight right now, short on cash. My mother-in-law sneered, turning to me. Is this your doing? I was tampering with her glucose meter when I looked up at her words. Mom, don't always point the finger at me, bitch. She grabbed the glucose meter and threw it at me. I dodged, and the device shattered against the wall. My husband finally snapped. Mom, can you please stop making a scene? That glucose meter cost over 500. You yelled at me. My mother-in-law widened her eyes in disbelief. You yelled at your own mother over 500 yuan. It's not about the money. My husband said irritably, running his hands through his hair. If you keep this up, I'll really send you to the postpartum center. My mother-in-law froze as if struck by lightning. I quietly slipped out of the living room, leaving the mother and son to their confrontation. In the kitchen, I opened the fridge and took out the durian cake I had prepared earlier, deliberately placing it in plain sight. 10 minutes later, my mother-in-law stormed into the kitchen in a huff and immediately spotted the cake. She glanced around, quickly scooped a large piece, and stuffed it into her mouth. Standing outside the door, I captured the moment with my phone. Evidence of a diabetic sneaking high-sugar food would prove very useful in the future. That night, her blood sugar spiked to dangerous levels, forcing us to call an ambulance. In the emergency room, the doctor warned gravely, if this continues, the fetus will be in mortal danger. My mother-in-law lay on the hospital bed, her face ashen. My husband stood by the bed, his eyes colder than ever before, and I, sitting quietly in the corner, watched as the tragedy I had orchestrated slowly began to unfold. My mother-in-law went into premature labor at 32 weeks of pregnancy. Call an ambulance, quick. My husband flustered as he supported his mother, the bedsheet already stained with blood. I calmly dialed 120 and began packing the maternity bag. This scene was eerily similar to my own difficult childbirth in my past life, only the roles were completely reversed. Sungning, what are you dawdling for? My husband yelled at me. Almost done. I stuffed my mother-in-law's pregnancy diary into my bag, which recorded the sweets she secretly ate every day and the exercises she refused to do. The siren of the ambulance pierced through the rainy night. As the medical staff carried my mother-in-law away, she clutched her son's hand tightly. Jace must have a natural birth, the master said. What kind of master is this at a time like this? My husband shook off her hand. It was the first time I'd seen him treat his mother so harshly. The hospital corridor was cold and endless. From the delivery room came the heart-wrenching screams of my mother-in-law, while my husband and I sat on the bench like two strangers. Do you think Mom will make it? He suddenly asked. I gently held his hand. The doctors will do their best. No comfort, no promises. Just like the words he once said to me in a past life. The delivery room door suddenly swung open, and a nurse rushed out. Family members, the mother insists on natural delivery, but the baby is too large and stuck in the birth canal. We need your consent to switch to a C-section. My husband froze in place. I took the consent form and pen and shoved them into his hands. Sign it. Any longer and the baby will suffer from oxygen deprivation. His hands trembling, he signed the form, and the nurse immediately dashed back into the delivery room. After what felt like an eternity, the faint cry of a baby finally reached our ears. It's born. My husband jumped up, his face lit with long-awaited joy. But when the doctor came out, his expression was grave. The baby weighs 4.8 kilograms, which is considered macrosomia, and shows symptoms of hypoglycemia. He needs to be placed in an incubator. He paused. The mother is hemorrhaging and is still being resuscitated. The smile on my husband's face froze. I stood quietly to the side, knowing full well that my mother-in-law wouldn't die. Death would be too merciful for her. I want her to live and taste the bitter fruits of her own making. At dawn, my mother-in-law was wheeled out of the operating room, her face as pale as paper. The doctor informed us that her uterus was severely damaged, making future pregnancies impossible, and she would suffer from permanent urinary incontinence. Outside the neonatal intensive care unit, we saw the baby for the first time. Its entire body red, its face covered with bruises from the birth canal, wrinkled like an old man. How can it be so ugly? My husband blurted out. The nurse explained unhappily. All macrosomic babies are like this. It'll get better in a few weeks. Through the glass, I observed the child who had indirectly caused the deaths of my daughter and me in our past life. He was wailing loudly, but his cries were as faint as a kitten's meow. In our past life, my mother-in-law called him the hope of the Liu family, but now he seemed nothing more than a sickly premature baby. The first words my mother-in-law said upon waking were, "Where's the baby? I want to see the baby, Mom." "The baby needs special care," my husband explained. "The doctor said they'll need to stay in an incubator for 2 weeks, and the cost, no matter the price." My mother-in-law interrupted him. "This is old Lou's posthumous child." My husband's expression changed. "I know what's on his mind. Money. Ever since I exposed his asset transfer, his financial situation has been stretched thin." "Jace," I spoke up at the right moment. "The final payment for my design project has come in. We can use it to cover the expenses first." My mother-in-law immediately became alert. "What design project?" My husband quickly interrupted. "Mom, don't worry about this, just rest well." But my mother-in-law wasn't so easily fooled. After returning home from the hospital, she waited until my husband went to work, then barged into the study on her crutches. "What on earth are you up to?" I was in a video call with my lawyer and quickly closed the laptop. "Mom, you need to rest. Cut the crap." She flipped open my notebook, but the screen had already gone black. "Jace has been acting strange lately. Did you stir up trouble between us?" I helped her sit down and handed her a glass of warm water. "Mom, you're overthinking it." While she drank, I pretended to hesitate before adding, "It's just, our finances have been tight lately." "Tight?" She scoffed. "Jace makes $500,000 a year. What's there to be tight about? You didn't know." I widened my eyes. "He lost all his investments and is in debt now." Mother-in-law's expression changed. "Impossible. He clearly what?" I stared at her intently. She suddenly shut her mouth, her eyes flickering. "Anyway, don't worry about it." I patted her hand. "My design income is decent enough to support us for a while." My mother-in-law looked at me suspiciously. "Since when have you been so good at making money?" "I always have been." I smiled. "I just never had the chance to show it before." These words pricked her pride like a needle. She had always suppressed me with the attitude of "the Liu family supports you." But now that lie collapsed on its own. That night, my husband came home very late from overtime work. My mother-in-law was already asleep, and I sat in the living room waiting for him. "Mom asked about our financial situation today," I said directly. His hands paused while taking off his coat. "What did you say?" "I told her your investments failed," I said, watching his reaction. She seemed really surprised. My husband slumped onto the sofa. "Of course she's surprised. All that money went to her." "How much?" I asked softly. "About $2 million in total." He didn't dare meet my eyes. I had already guessed the approximate figure from the bank statements, but hearing it firsthand still sent a shock through my heart. $2 million. Enough for my daughter and me to live comfortably, had been secretly transferred to that venomous woman, Sang Ning. He grabbed my hand. "I know I was wrong." I pulled my hand back. "Who will take care of the child after they're discharged from the hospital?" He paused for a moment. "Of course, Mom will. She can't even take care of herself properly." I sneered. "The doctor said the child has a weak constitution and needs careful nursing." The husband fell silent. He certainly knew what this meant. Endless night crying, frequent hospital visits, exorbitant costs for formula and medical bills. 2 weeks later, the child was discharged from the hospital. The mother-in-law insisted on taking care of the child herself, but she broke down on the very first day. The baby wakes up crying heartbreakingly every 2 hours, dragging her postpartum weakened body up to nurse. She couldn't express any breast milk because she hadn't initiated lactation in time. Go buy formula. At 3 a.m., she burst into our bedroom screaming. My groggy husband drove out, only to find the most expensive formula at the 24-hour pharmacy cost 398 yuan per can. He sent me a WeChat message to complain, but I didn't reply. In my past life, my daughter drank budget formula that cost 68 yuan per can, and my mother-in-law still scolded me for wasting money. The next morning at breakfast, my mother-in-law appeared with dark circles under her eyes, the baby in her arms crying non-stop. Is he sick? She asked in panic. I glanced over. Just normal fussing. Can you take him for a while? She suddenly shoved the baby into my arms. I have a headache. I didn't reach out to take him, letting the infant squirm in her embrace instead. Mom, I'm rushing a design draft. The client is pressing hard. What kind of lousy design is more important than your child? She shrieked. The kind that puts food on the table. I replied calmly. Where else would the money for his formula come from? Mother-in-law was choked into speechlessness. Just then, my husband came out of the bathroom, and she immediately turned to her son. Jace, control your wife. My husband glanced at me, then at the crying baby, and suddenly turned to walk out the door. I'm going to be late for work. Mother-in-law couldn't believe her eyes. Holding the crying baby in one arm and pressing against her throbbing surgical wound with the other, she finally realized that in this household, she was no longer the all-powerful queen mother. As for me, I quietly finished the last sip of my coffee and got up to continue my design work in the study. On the computer screen, a new email notification blinked. My jewelry design had been selected by a renowned magazine. With an interview scheduled for next week's column, the fruits of revenge were ripening, one by one. The baby's cries punctually rang out at 3 in the morning. I opened my eyes, listening to the curses and sounds of objects being thrown from the master bedroom next door, a cold smile curling at the corners of my lips. My mother-in-law hadn't had a full night's sleep for 2 weeks straight. The dark circles under her eyes were so deep they looked like bruises. A heavy thud echoed from the living room, followed by the baby's even more heart-wrenching screams. I pushed the door open and went out, only to see my mother-in-law slumped on the ground. What are you staring at? She snapped the moment she noticed me. It's all because of your curses. Ever since you married into this family, ever since I married into this family, you've been scheming to get rid of me. I calmly interrupted. Like poisoning my postpartum meals, my mother-in-law froze like a chicken with its neck wrung, her lips trembling and her fingers unconsciously clutching at her urine-soaked nightgown. Do you know why I remember it so clearly? I leaned in and whispered in her ear. Because I caught the scent of sweet almonds in that boxed meal, the smell of cyanide. My mother-in-law shoved me away violently, her back hitting the coffee table. You're insane. You've lost your mind. The baby at her feet wailed itself hoarse. Haven't you always wondered why your youngest son is so sickly and frail? I said coolly. Because every bite of sweets you stole during pregnancy, every time you refused to exercise, has come back to haunt him. Shut up. She struggled to her feet and roared. Jace, do you hear me? Your wife has gone mad. My husband's door remained tightly shut. My mother-in-law stumbled to bang on the door, looking like a ridiculous drowned rat. I carried the baby back to the room, took a small bottle of medicine from the drawer, and dripped it into his milk bottle. This was a special nutrient solution prepared by Cheng Jin. At least it could spare this poor little one some suffering. In my past life, my daughter didn't even get a sip of breast milk, yet in this life, I have to feed the child of my enemy. How ironic. At daybreak, I dressed neatly and prepared to go out. My mother-in-law blocked the doorway, her eyes shadowed by 2 puffy bags. Where are you going? Magazine interview. I waved the invitation in my hand, about my award-winning design. What award? She snatched the invitation, her face changing dramatically after a quick glance. International Jewelry Design Competition. Since when did you? I always could, just never had the chance. I took back the invitation and deliberately raised my voice. Oh, I forgot to mention. I've signed with Rueline Jewelry, annual salary of 600,000. My husband's door burst open, and he stuck his head out, his hair disheveled. How much? 600,000, after taxes. I smiled at him. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to Paris next Monday to receive the award. It'll take about a week. No way, my mother-in-law shrieked. Who's going to take care of the child? Of course, it's you. I feigned surprise. Isn't this the Liu family heir you've been dreaming of? My husband's gaze darted between me and my mother, and I could practically hear the abacus clicking in his mind. 600,000, more than his salary. I'll take you to the airport, he suddenly said. My mother-in-law widened her eyes in disbelief. Jace, Mom, Songning's career success is a good thing, he said stiffly. Avoiding his mother's eyes, I let out a light chuckle and walked out with my bag. My husband quickly caught up, eagerly helping me with my coat and pressing the elevator button. This snobbish man. In our past life, he could stand by and watch his wife and daughter die just to please his mother, and now, for money, he would betray her too. In the car, he hesitated several times, as if wanting to say something but holding back. At the red light, he finally spoke up. Sang Ning, can we start over? I turned to look at him. This face that once made my heart flutter now only filled me with disgust. How do we start over? Mom is getting older, and taking care of the child is really beyond her strength, he stammered. We could hire a nanny, using your income. My income, I sneered. Honey, do you know why I suddenly told you my annual salary? He shook his head in bewilderment. Because according to the marriage law, your debts have nothing to do with me, but my income would be split with you in half during a divorce. I watched with satisfaction as his expression changed abruptly. Unless I can prove you've been transferring marital assets. His face instantly turned deathly pale. Sang Ning, 2 million, I whispered. You transferred 2 million to your mother. Yet you stood by and watched me and our daughter die. What daughter? He looked utterly confused. Sang Ning, what on earth are you talking about? Only then did I realize I'd slipped up. Quickly regaining my composure, I said, never mind. We're here. Just stop the car. He didn't move, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Have you been wanting a divorce all along? Ever since the first time you took your mother's side and blamed me? I pushed the car door open and got out. The lawyer's letter will be delivered to your office next week. The magazine interview went very well, dressed in a sharply tailored suit. I spoke eloquently about women's independence and artistic creation. After the interview, I went straight to the law firm. Based on the evidence you provided, your husband needs to return at least 1.4 million. She adjusted her glasses. As for your mother-in-law, no rush. I opened my notebook. Take a look at this first. On the screen was a video showing my mother-in-law mixing sleeping pills into the baby's formula. This was captured by the hidden camera I installed in the living room. To make the child sleep through the night, she resorted to drugging. Oh my God, Lawyer Jong gasped. This is enough to sue her for child abuse. I don't want to sue her. I closed my laptop. I want her to watch everything she cherishes turn to dust. On the day the divorce papers were delivered to my husband, my mother-in-law frantically called me. I immediately blocked her number and instead called the neighborhood committee to report a case of infant abuse. That evening, social workers came to inspect the home. Through the camera, I watched my mother-in-law's hysterical performance and my husband's flustered excuses, while the poor child lay quietly in the crib, thanks to the sleeping pills. The next day, I received a call from my husband's company HR, saying he had suddenly taken leave. I immediately knew what had happened. The social workers must have threatened to call the police, forcing them to take the child to the hospital for examination. Cheng Jin, who works at the hospital, quickly sent me a message. The child's blood tested positive for diazepam. The police have been notified. Your husband and his mother are currently at the police station blaming each other. At the police station, my mother-in-law and husband were accusing each other. I stood behind the one-way glass, listening to their testimonies. It was Mom's idea, my husband said, his face slick with sweat. She said the child was too noisy. Bullshit, the mother-in-law shrieked. The medicine was bought by you. The police officer looked at the mother and son with disgust. According to the law on the protection of minors, you are suspected of child abuse and will face criminal charges. It's not my fault. My husband suddenly pointed at me. My wife is the one taking care of the child. The officer followed his gesture and looked at me. Calmly, I showed the surveillance footage on my phone. I've rarely been home over the past 3 months due to work. These are all scenes of my mother-in-law taking care of the child. In the video, the mother-in-law roughly shakes the baby, pours powder into the bottle, and even covers the crying child with a pillow. The police officer's expression grows increasingly grim. That's not what happened. The mother-in-law lunges forward, trying to snatch the phone. She's framing me. I deftly dodge her and pull out a document from my bag. Additionally, I'm filing for divorce. Here's evidence of my husband transferring our marital assets. My husband turns ashen. While the mother-in-law suddenly lets out a wail and collapses to the floor. The police called an ambulance, and the diagnosis was a stroke. In the hospital hallway, the doctor told me, left-sided paralysis, impaired speech function, and long-term rehabilitation will be needed. How unfortunate, I murmured softly, glancing at my husband sitting dazed beside me. How do you plan to take care of Mom and the kids? He looked up. His eyes filled with unprecedented despair. Sang Ning, I know I was wrong. Please forgive me. Forgive, keep dreaming. I threw down those words and turned to leave. The stroke left my mother-in-law completely paralyzed on her left side, with a perpetual trail of drool hanging from the corner of her mouth. The court ultimately sentenced her to 6 months in prison, suspended. My husband wasn't so fortunate, for his involvement in child abuse. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison, suspended for 2 years. The company fired him immediately upon learning of this and also investigated financial issues in the projects he handled. My divorce proceedings went surprisingly smoothly. The court ruled that the husband must return the transferred $1.4 million in assets and pay monthly child support. Even though the child was not biologically his, DNA tests revealed the child's biological father was the so-called master, whom the mother-in-law had paid $300,000 to conceive the posthumous child through his treatments. The day the truth came out, the husband vomited right there in the courtroom. Meanwhile, the mother-in-law sat in her wheelchair, only able to utter ah sounds, her twisted face streaked with tears and mucus. I keep these images saved in my phone, and whenever the night is quiet and sleep eludes me, I take them out to look at. This is not cruelty, but necessary therapy. After the divorce, my career flourished. In the latest magazine feature, I spoke publicly about that marriage for the first time. Some wounds, forgiveness is not a virtue, forgetting is the real folly. A year later, in the depths of autumn, I went to volunteer at the welfare home and happened to see that child. He had already learned to walk, though smaller and thinner than his peers. At least his eyes no longer held the dullness caused by sleeping pills. What's his name? I asked the caregiver, Song Nyaning. The caregiver said with a smile. The director gave her this name, saying there's a MS, Song who has been supporting us. I crouched down to meet the child at eye level. He studied me curiously, then suddenly reached out to touch the phoenix brooch on my chest. Do you like it? I asked softly. This is a phoenix, symbolizing rebirth. The child giggled, revealing 2 dimples. At this moment, it was as if I saw the daughter from my past life who never got to grow up. As I stood up, I noticed my hands were trembling. Leaving the orphanage, the late autumn sun gently fell upon my shoulders. The phone vibrated. It was a message from Cheng Jin. Mom's condition is critical. The nursing home is asking if we should resuscitate. I replied with follow standard procedure, then deleted the chat. At a red light, a familiar figure on an electric scooter brushed past my car window. It was my husband. He looked 10 years older than the last time I saw him. The white hair at the back of his head glaring under the sunlight. A delivery box was strapped to the back seat, its side printed with the faded words Lightning Delivery. He didn't recognize my car, or perhaps, he simply had no time to notice his surroundings. When the light turned green, he shot forward like an arrow from a bow, nearly colliding with a right-turning truck. The truck driver leaned out and shouted curses, but he just numbly adjusted his helmet and hurried on his way. I turned on the left signal and drove off in a completely different direction. In the rearview mirror, my husband's figure grew smaller and smaller, eventually disappearing into the traffic. Outside the window, the setting sun painted the sky in a brilliant orange-red hue. I raised my teacup and lightly clinked it against the void. Respect life.